Welcome to One Man's Tracks, the secondhand music channel. A fun aspect of buying all these secondhand CDs has been stumbling across the occasional album from an overlooked Canadian artist. Today, I have the privilege of sharing with you one such Vancouver-based band known as Veal. The band was formed by Halifax-born, Winnipeg-raised Luke Doucette, who in '92 moved to Vancouver, leaving the band acoustically inclined and joining on with Sarah McLachlan's band to be her new lead guitarist. In '94, he'd be joined by multi-instrumentalist Barry Milochnik as well as drummer Chang, and they would release their debut album, Hot Loser, in 1996. I find that debut a bit underwhelming, maybe a tad too front-loaded with a bunch of pleasant but sadly toothless indie rock songs. The second half of it does provide a couple more interesting, more engaging, moodier songs in my opinion, like the spacey, psychedelic rock instrumental called Cheesecake. You have a gloomy surf rock song that has a cool vibe to it called Two Heads, as well as a Moxie Frubus punk song. That's how I can best describe it. It's called Girlfriend Part 1, and I think those three are definitely worth your while. Following that album with Tilt-A-Whirl in '99, with Barry being replaced by Howard Redekop on the bass, and Veal returning with a slightly catchier batch of indie rock tunes. Highlights from that album for me being the pop rockier opener Spider-Man that does have a bit of an edge to it, as does the song Pinkos. The Monkey Tree is an evocative piece of folk rock. I, however, don't really know how to feel about the bluesier song Po Black Child. I'm just gonna move right along. When the band played their showcase set during Canadian Music Week in Toronto that year, they got signed on to a management deal with Shauna DeCaltier, who, after becoming impatient trying to find the band a label, she just started up her very own called Six Shooter Records. Luke stepped away from the group to record a solo record of material that was deemed a little too soft for the group. It would be titled Aloha Manitoba and be released in 2001. The flagship record for Six Shooter, and the success of which would put the future of Veal in jeopardy. He would, however, return for one last batch of unpredictable rock songs for their third and final release. In June of 2003, with Nick Kozub on bass this time, produced by Stephen Drake. This is Veal, the Embattled Hearts. Possibly being aware of this being their swan song, the band emits this unfettered energy that elicits attention at each turn. As far as I'm concerned, this is peak Veal, and this spirited send-off is inspired. The kind of album that makes you wish that nobody liked Luke's solo stuff, because for as all over the rock and roll map as this is, it manages to hit on some very progressive angles and stumble into some sounds that would soon become incredibly dominant in the indie, fusion, and blues rock scenes. The Embattled Hearts covers a lot of ground throughout its 42.5-minute runtime, from classic rock riffs to forward-thinking rock fusions with some classic indie and pop tunes sandwiched in between. The through lines being Luke's compelling, dynamic deliveries and the band's ability to rock along, match, and push his vocal vigors. Even with this being their most eclectic LP, it's still all pulled together into a cohesive album structure through thoughtful sequencing to go along with its dramatic flair. The cool attitude, catchy melodies, and diverse rockin' nature of this project has endeared me to this underrated group that threatens to be relegated to obscurity due to just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It is really a shame that more people haven't heard this, and I hope I can convince you that we should keep this embattled heart pumping. I feel like it makes a pretty solid case for itself with the hard rock opening instrumental song called Defiler. Starting out uncharacteristically heavy here, they bring the fire with a very Cashmere-esque breakdown. They jam over intermittently as they rock out. They build in tension and energy and then charge into the pop rockin' single called Everybody Wants More Cocaine. This song has an underlying snideness to it that it wins me over with, on top of its simple, driving dance rock rhythms and catchy choruses. Everybody wants more cocaine. Everybody needs another bump. So after rapidly running through drugs and rock and roll, we're on our way to Search for Love with the song Girlfriend Part 2 and 3 all mashed into one song here. It surfs in. Part 2 is this sunny, haughty, harmonic piece that is then turned up a gear with part 3 sounding like a sped up Black Keys number. The boys bring this fiery blues rock to turn this originally easygoing number all the way up to a fever pitch. Sliding then into a more introspective direction, the song Radio melodramatically reminisces about the passage of time. It mourns lost feelings and memories, and while it does have its fair share of theatrics, the track does well to stay effectively weighty and grounded throughout. Now for a song that I can unfortunately relate to, titled Judy Garland, and while I am a fan of The Wizard of Oz, this song really isn't about Miss Garland at all. It is about getting knocked unconscious. It's told in this very Canadian sounding way, an alternative indie tune that endures itself to me through that common folly of hitting my head on the ground, and it's told with this tremendous catchy chorus. Everything went black when my head hit the ground. Nobody came running 'cause nobody was around. They say silence is a deafening sound. Next is one that Luke did record for that solo debut that's called Mitzi's, and this time it's less folky, less singer-songwritery, and more rockabilly roundabout in its presentation. With a great hook, some fun noodleage, and some alluring writing, it keeps this project good and zesty. With enough pep there to bring us into the emotional, juiced-up single called I Hate Your Lipstick. And as catchy as this song is, it's probably my least favorite on the record, kind of reminding me of those corny, obnoxious, hot heat songs, but I wouldn't even go that far. It's fine, but maybe a little one note. So sauntering in after that superficial vitriol is the track Circles, a slower indie Americana ballad of sorts. It's a curious tale that never quite seems to ever get where it's trying to go. It's a lovely tune with some little clever lyrical quips in it, but ultimately it's pretty forgettable. Toothbrush, the follow-up, on the other hand, is one that leaves a much more lasting impression. It kind of feels like you're getting out of that circles trap and finally moving forward. It's this fun, unapologetic apology that is super familiar in a way I can't quite place, but it reminds me a lot of something else I've heard. Do you guys have any idea of what this song might remind you of? I do still like Miss Brazil as much as it isn't the most cohesive piece. It has some pretty sloppy musical change-ups, but I can really appreciate the elements that Veal is playing with here, from the super progress-minded, airy REM choruses that turn into these fearful, wavering breakdowns to create a super interesting internal conflict. It just doesn't quite get delivered in the most thrilling way. Cranking it back up for the last couple here, starting with Cowboy, a fantastic cut whose sound and vibe beat the Arctic Monkeys to the punch. It's just phenomenal, and actually there's a couple of other tunes on the record that share a similar atmosphere and delivery to this one, those being Radio and More Cocaine, that are just clearly a bit ahead of their time here. Now with the closer Fader Creep, the band borders on noise rock. It's a tad woozy, but as headstrong as ever. It might not be for everyone, but I totally love this one. For those more experimentally enthused, this is the track not to miss out on. It's a dark, off-kilter number that just squeals with potential and leaves me just so disappointed that there's no more delicious veal out there to devour. Personally, I think the Embattled Hearts was an ahead of the curve creative triumph. It deserved props where props are due because some of these songs beat some huge bands to their signature sound. I guess it just didn't quite reach the right ears. Regardless, I think it's a formidable farewell for an undersung group whose songs will remain in this Embattled Hearts collection for a long time. Following the band's breakup in 2004, Nick Kozub would return to Edmonton where he'd co-found a electro-punk dance house group called Shout Out, 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 and they've since released 3 albums under that name. Luc Doucette went on to release, I think, 4 or 5 more solo albums through Six Shooter and has continued to work with artists like Sarah McLachlan, a ton of other big Canadian names like Delirium. Check out my Delirium review over there. And he actually has also performed with his wife, Melissa McClelland, in Sarah McLachlan's backing band, and she has 4 solo albums of her own before she and him combined forces in 2010 to form the group Whitehorse, who has just released their 8th album a few weeks ago called I'm Not Crying, You're Crying. Check it out. No clue what Chang's been up to. If you know, let me know. And if you know anything about Veal or have any memories or favorite songs or just fun little tidbits that I don't know, please, I'd love to know more about these guys. Do you know about any other cool, odd Canadian bands that ought to have been a lot bigger than they were? Comments. I want to know so I can keep my eye out for them while I continue this second-hand salvage mission that I'm on. Here's a couple of albums that are in that kind of vein that I've talked about. You can subscribe if you want more and leave a like if you like. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You take all the best care. I'll see you next time.